Hi, this is Dr. Pulsifer, and you might regard the title this time as a little odd: combat, sport, or war. But of course I will explain. Can combat be a sport? Well, this idea comes to me from RPGs in general. Jeffro Johnson was the one who introduced me to it. There are two different ways to arrange fights. One is like war, and the other is like a sporting event. Sporting events are supposed to be fair contests between roughly equal forces. Think of fighting in the arena, especially in video games where you can have arena fights between characters. We don't have 7th tier Blythe Spartans playing in the Premier League. We don't have local semi-pro or college basketball teams playing in the NBA because it would be boringly one-sided. People want to see a contest where it appears, at least, that both sides can win, and occasionally they do even when they're not supposed to. But war isn't like that. The objective in war is to get such an overwhelming advantage that the other side surrenders rather than fight. And if they choose not to surrender, then a boring, quote-unquote, one-sided massacre is just fine. Stratagems are favored in war. Trickery. They're not frowned upon. Trickery is frowned upon in sports in general. It's not fair. It's cheating. Many games use combat as sport because a game is essentially a sport. You expect a game to be fair, that each side has a chance to win. So, let's take World of Tanks. You have equal numbers of tanks in the teams. There are 10 tiers to determine who you play against, so you won't play against a tank that's much weaker than you or much stronger than you. On the other hand, all's fair in love and war, quote unquote. If you've ever read Glenn Cook's Black Company, or if you think about mercenaries in general, they don't want a fair fight. They don't want to risk anything. They want a massacre. They'll use stratagems, and the Black Company was great at that. This could be called the third great dichotomy of wargaming. War is inherently unfair, but games must be fair. And this is where asymmetry comes to the rescue. In a symmetric game, every player starts with the same position, the same forces, same locations, same objectives, and then it's up to them what they make of it. So games like Risk, Checkers, and so forth. However, it has to be said, in turn-based games, there can still be inequities coming from the turn order. For example, in chess, white wins and white goes first, much more than black wins. In an asymmetric game, the sides begin with different locations, different forces, and sometimes even different objectives. Frequently, the weaker force has a stronger economy, or they have a better reinforcement schedule, or there's a time limit. And the weaker force just has to do well enough that the time limit kicks in before they lose, or the reinforcements kick in and enable them to win, or the stronger economy makes a difference before the enemy captures so much of that economy that they have the stronger economy. In this situation, you can still have one-sided battles. The question is generally how much or how well the weaker force can contribute to winning the game by holding off the enemy. And that is actually, for many people, a much more interesting kind of game. In games, we see asymmetry much more often in war games than in anything else. It's very common that family games and party games and most any game for more than 2 players is symmetric. It's very difficult to have a game for more than 2 sides that is asymmetric. In fact, beyond my own game Britannia and Britannia-like games, few games do so. Unfortunately, from a game designer's viewpoint, and I know this very well from Britannia, asymmetry is usually much harder to get balanced than symmetry. In the case of Britannia, you get 4 different sides, and you want to arrange the game so that all four sides have a reasonably equal chance of winning. That's hard to do. On the other hand, war gamers, as opposed to non-war gamers, are more willing to accept that the sides may not be balanced, because that's the way war is. Is either one better? Well, if you want to lean toward realistic, then combat as war is what you want. If you are in a situation where you feel the game is more important than the model, or when you have more than two sides, then combat as sport is a perfectly reasonable choice. It's still, over the course of a game, especially with more than two sides, there are going to be asymmetries building up, and so there will still be one-sided combats. In any case, you need to be aware of the kind of combat you're building into your game.